Okay, well, we are broadcasting or streaming live tonight, so we should probably follow the conventions of that medium rather than the conventions of a live medium, where you kind of wait for people to wander in. But since we have people tuning in, we should probably start pretty much on time. I'm Gordon Stewart, publisher of Philipstown.info, and be moderating tonight's discussion. It's intended as a forum, a discussion, a conversation, not a debate or a boxing match or something like that. In fact, we will probably open it up, because you get tired of just the two of us talking. For
fast.
certainly of me talking, probably open it up for some questions or comments that anybody wants to make. In the course of it, the plan was to have an hour for the conversation with supervisor and an hour for people seeking a place on the town board. Before we start, this is the fourth event in a row for Philipstown.info. I'm kind of proud of that. At our space on Friday night, we had the opening night for the Open Studios. First time I think that's been done in Cold Spring, Garrison, Philipstown. And that was nice and jam-packed. Saturday night, we had a play reading, first of a series of 6 of those that will be done by this new theater company. Then last night, there was a very moving concert by Sloan Wainwright. For those of you who don't know her singing her music, and I didn't, she is really seriously good. And if you get a chance to hear her anywhere around here, please do. So we've had art, we've had some theater, we've had music, and tonight we have public affairs. I'm going to begin by saying that, frankly, I am disappointed that not all of the candidates are here tonight. I don't know Katie. I do know Lee, and I like and respect him. We've had many good conversations around school boards and other issues, and I'm frankly puzzled and baffled that there's apparently been sufficient pressure exerted that he's not appearing. I'm speaking for myself. I'm also a little disappointed, and frankly a little hurt, that some of the reasons for this that have been published anonymously, I might add, the policy we permit, have implied that for some reason I would not be a fair and equitable moderator. I must say I take fairly serious personal exception to that, having served this country and the city in both parties, and presidents, secretaries of defense, and directors of central intelligence in both parties in serious parts of the world. I think I can separate for the course of a couple of hours the conduct of public affairs from my personal political convictions. I assume everybody in public life is able to do the same. And so I just have to say that on my behalf, that I'm not really very pleased with that being given as an excuse. But at any rate, I don't believe that's the real reason, so I'm not fundamentally offended. With that, let's begin our conversation. As promised, I brought my glasses so I can read them, we will proceed from questions that have been published for about 10 days. And they're the kind of questions, I think, having done this stuff for some 50 years, that people who run for public office and seek to lead us, regardless of their party or the level of that office, should be able to handle these kinds of basic questions. And while that may lower the entertainment value of the evening, that's not really why, unlike the previous 3 things we did this weekend, that's really not why we're doing this tonight, for its entertainment value. We're doing it for what it will tell us about the people who seek to lead our town. And so it does not seem to me to be a sneaky or devious question to ask Richard, especially since he is the supervisor now, what do you believe are the most serious challenges we face as a town in the next 2 years? And how do you propose that we meet them?
Okay. I just want to start by saying thank you. Thank you to everyone for showing up tonight. It's encouraging to see as many people out. And thank you to Philipstown.info for hosting this event. And thank you to Haldane School for letting us use the room. As far as the most serious challenges facing the town, it's always going to be about the budget. And you'll hear a lot tonight. It'll probably get tiresome after a while, but it is always about the budget because, as everyone knows, we're in a down economy and it's more challenging than ever. But that being said, right on the heels of the budget is the fact that we've just had a hurricane and we need to repair our infrastructure in town. We had a lot of damage in the millions of dollars. And, that needs to be addressed. There are roads that are still closed. And the budget, those two are tied together. So you have this hurricane happens. What we did during that was beforehand, we had set up our local EOC. That went great. That was due in large part to Councilman Van Tassel and Councilman Montgomery because we're so geographically separated from the county. And that made that event, go as smoothly as it could for us. But during that, we did experience incredible damage to private property and the town's roads. We probably have in excess of $2 million worth of damage to public roads. So how you pay for that and how that ties to the budget, how that's going to impact the budget is really one of our vital concerns right now. Right after the hurricane, I got on the phone calling the county, calling the state, calling the federal government. I called Senator Schumer's office 3 times a day, every day, until I got an answer. What they said was, if you stop calling us, we'll come. But it was, sometimes that's what it takes. They don't make a manual for what to do in the event of an emergency. So we were able to get Senator Schumer here, and he brought the regional director of FEMA with them. And I'm tying this back to how we're going to address the road issue. When you get FEMA here, you not only are going to get or try to get individual assistance, which we have already gotten for the town, which means private homes will be put back the way they were. We took in over $500,000 already in individual assistance, but you also get the public assistance portion of that. And FEMA will pay 75% of the cost of projects. Those projects get listed individually. We'll be having a kickoff meeting next week regarding how we're going to proceed. There have been several steps already. We're about halfway through the process for getting that funding. That's going to go a long way. You also can apply to New York State. They'll kick in an additional 12.5%, and you're left with the other 12.5%. At that point, you're looking at probably funding a municipal bond. But as bad as this all was, it also is going to give us an opportunity to address some long-standing concerns that we've had, and also to mitigate some of those things so we don't get this in the future. So between the federal government, with FEMA giving us 75%, which we fully intend to apply for about 20 separate projects, including stream remediation of Clove Creek, repairs to roads, culverts, bridges, all of our infrastructure, some buildings in town, and the 12.5% we'll file with for the state, and getting a municipal bond, then we'll be able to repair the roads. As far as the budget goes, some of the steps I took last year, which was my first budget year, I've only been supervisor for less than 2 years now, but we cut out $500,000 in spending last year. And when you do that sort of thing, you're going to make some people unhappy. As much as you hear people say, I want lower taxes, I want stable taxes, I think there's a disconnect at some point. When it comes to your front door, or when it comes to your department, suddenly it's like, I didn't mean my department, I meant somebody else's department. But we went through the entire budget and cut things out. Where you have a bigger budget, obviously you're going to take a bigger cut. But last year we cut an average of 10% out of every major department. In the end, we had $500,000 in cuts. But did that mean a tax cut for the town? No, it didn't, because the state of New York has certain mandates we have to fulfill. The discretionary portion of our budget is pretty small. And with the state of New York, when you're a member of the benefit system, you need to kick in. State of New York last year, the benefits increased in the retirement about 15% and the health care about 12%. The bottom line was the levy went up at about 0.7%. So that took some deep, serious cuts, which are going to continue this year.
Okay, that's the immediate future. Then the next question is longer term. What are we looking at?
Well, long term, there are several things that we'd like to address. Some long-term challenges are again, it's always going to come back to the budget. How do we sustain ourselves? How do we bring in more revenue? And that's one thing we've been working on, trying to get different sources of revenue, things like having an assistant district attorney in town, that avails us of more funding through the courts. A lot of tickets get dismissed in town. About 400 tickets get dismissed every year. So when you have that sort of thing going on, you're losing revenue. And I'm not saying we want to start hammering people for that, but if someone comes in, for a traffic infraction, they've been speeding through our town, and there's a fine, we'd like to collect that fine. That's one idea. There are other areas of revenue that we've been exploring, but you can't only go at it from a revenue side because we just don't produce a lot of revenue here. But we have to keep looking at the budget as how can we pare things down? How can we consolidate positions? There's also challenges with seniors. We're looking to help seniors out in this town. The senior citizens have a tiny space over at the American Legion. And I eat lunch with them. We go over there. We see a lot of the seniors. And it's not the best. I mean, when the seniors, you get to be that age, you've lived here your whole life, you pay taxes here, you deserve better. And we're going to make sure they get better, in the future. Those meals that they get, their hot lunch program, it starts out over in Putnam Valley. It's not that great when it starts out. And by the time it gets here, it doesn't get any better. I've eaten some of those lunches. And, they appreciate it, but I feel bad for them when I have to eat over there. We can do much better here. This is a great community. We have great restaurants here. We have talented people. So one of the things we could do is provide a decent hot lunch for seniors. So that's one thing, one of the challenges, I think, in how to fund that. We've also committed to 4,000 square feet at the Butterfield site for not only a senior center, but a multi-use town center, an ADA-compliant meeting space. And we could have a kitchen over there and prepare hot meals for the seniors. So those are a couple of things that I think we face. It's always going to be about the budget. It's going to be about improving infrastructure. But I do want to, make sure we take care of our most vulnerable.
Thanks. Having made such a fuss now for a while about proceeding from the questions, which I will go back to doing,
right,
and no trick stuff or another, since I don't think you're going to complain about the ref, suppose this might be a good place to stop for a second, since we've been talking about issues, challenges facing us now and long run, and see if anybody wants to ask a question or make a reaction based on what you've just said, and let's have a conversation. Anybody want to jump in now, or do you want to wait till later?
No one.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Gordon, I'm just curious, Richard. There's been controversy brought up in the local paper, I think, more about your style of government. And although I've read and understand from other people that you have an open door policy, that many people have come in and taken advantage of it, but maybe you could explain how you go about having to govern in ways that that sometimes seem to upset people. In other words, calling meetings at what seems to be short notice. If you could, address that, I think that would help clear up a lot of the noise in the air around that issue.
Okay, well, I'm glad you asked that. Government doesn't just go on in the evening. We work during the day. I'm at town hall every single day during the day, and things come up that have to be addressed pretty rapidly. And if we get things, we like to get out in front of them. We don't want to have certain things, especially if they're controversial, defined before we can, frame the issue. There was the fire study got delivered to town hall, and we wanted to get in there and have a meeting about it, the day that it came. We were expecting it to come, but when it finally got there, we wanted to get in there and discuss it. So that'd be one instance where we'll go into town hall and just have a meeting, accept the document, and talk about it, maybe in a broad sense. We don't do anything behind closed doors. No meetings are conducted behind closed doors unless it's regarding a legal issue, an ongoing legal case or something like that. And we do conduct interviews behind closed doors because, it's difficult to conduct public interviews. But, any person can request a meeting on any given Wednesday evening for anything they desire. Any person in Philipstown could say, I would like to sit down with the town board on Wednesday night and have my own private or personal meeting with the town board because I have an issue. So I don't know how much more open you can get than that. There are things that come up as regarding finance that have to be addressed during the day sometimes. There are emergency situations. If we have to declare a state of emergency, we may have to get together and meet. And there are also convenience times where we'll have some sort of just, not rote piece of business, but some, I don't know, academic piece of business we have to take care of. Either we're authorizing the the transfer of funds from one highway fund to another. If the highway superintendent says, well, I'm running out of money in the snow line and I need to get some money into the salt line, or I need some money into, equipment or something like that. So we'll get together at town hall, 3 of us or 4 of us, if who's ever available, but everybody's called in, and go ahead and take care of that piece of business. We never take care of controversial issues during the day. We know that people have to be involved. We're very sensitive to that. But, their business does go on at all hours, and certain things do need to be addressed during the day. And also, whenever there is a meeting, if we're getting together at Town Hall, that goes up on the website. In the future, we're going to get a subscriber list, and we're going to send out email blasts to people. So if you feel like coming down and being a part of that meeting, if you have time, come on down. It's very, very rare, I will say, that a meeting just happens, is announced that day and happens that day. It's extremely rare. I mean, that happens either in an emergency circumstance or, if some financial issue comes up that has to be dealt with. But other than that, all meetings are open to the public. We meet a lot, as the board will know. Anyone will tell you. And every Wednesday night, anyone from the entire community or any time can call me and arrange a meeting. Say, I'd like to meet you in Town Hall and talk one-on-one. My door is always open.
I didn't know that, and we have just told, you have just told all the people watching this and who will see it on .info as it's run over and over again that they can call a meeting. We thought it was meetings before. Actually, I was going to save that question till the end, but it's good to get the end ones out early. I guess where I was going and see if since we opened the discussion with challenges and issues, shorter term and longer term, facing Philipstown, and that's presumably what we're all most concerned about. Does anybody want to raise anything about any of those? They want to say anything about Richard's characterization of them, or what he proposes to do, or what you would do, or what you want somebody to do?
Richard, you talked a lot in your opening remarks about how it all comes down to the budget. And I'd like to know whether you and the board have plans to do more economic development. I was thinking of this, the mayor of Fishkill recently, it is reported, was instrumental in getting a Chinese company to buy the empty IBM facility, which is going to bring in jobs and revenue to Fishkill. Obviously, Philipstown does not have that kind of commercial development, but rather than just relying on taxes and grants, it seems to me there needs to be a broader, long-range search for development that will not alter the character inappropriately.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really important point there, and that's altering the character of the town. We're not Fishkill, and for a lot of reasons. We don't have the infrastructure here. Our business, our commercial corridor is pretty constrained. We are in the business of scenic beauty and natural resources. That's what brings people here. A lot of people come up from New York to visit the area. They support local restaurants. They support local businesses. They buy homes here. They spend weekends here, and they pay taxes here. They pay a lot of taxes. A lot of people have the weekend homes. But as far as the best way to support local business, I'll say one thing we did in the zoning was create more business property. We created more opportunity for small business. I've worked with the EDC, the Economic Development Corporation for Putnam County, and the IDA, the Industrial Development Agency, and the Hudson Valley Economic Council to try to get businesses here. We've taken them around to vacant spots in town. We have several vacant businesses on Route 9. And it's sort of vexing as to why, when we have businesses that have direct access to a state highway, we're only just south of 84, why someone won't relocate here. They come and they look and they don't stay. And I just think that we have a pretty small, commercial corridor. A lot of people are looking for bigger spaces. We're constrained in a lot of ways from the topography. We have a lot of wetlands. Even where some of these businesses are, they are constrained. They don't have a lot of opportunity for growth. But as far as supporting the businesses we have, I think that's really vital. And pushing the tourism aspect of things, trying to get creative as far as things that will bring more people to the community to spend more money here and support the businesses we have, and also to support appropriate business. We had a baker from upstate come down and got very excited about that. The Heidelberg Bake Company came down and we're looking to relocate here, and we had some talks about it, and it just never happened. They didn't find the space that they needed here. Now, as far as us providing that space, that's not something we're going to be able to do realistically. But providing a friendly business climate, that's something we can do. And currently, we have some opportunities, with people looking at things. But again, our business here is tourism, it is scenic beauty, and that's what we need to promote.
Okay, sir, I didn't realize I was blocking a whole bunch of people on my right here. That was directional and inexperienced, not ideological. I apologize on this side. We now come to, for those of you who've been following these questions on Philipstown.info, what is known in the lore of American politics now as the Roger Mudd question. Does everybody know what the Roger Mudd question is or was? It's worth knowing because this will come up again and again in your political time. The only time Teddy Kennedy ran for president of the United States was in 1980 to challenge Jimmy Carter for renomination. And he had a great head of steam behind him. Those of you who are old enough remember gas lines, general difficulty, hostages, all sorts of problems. Actually, the hostages hadn't been taken yet at that point. And so there was a lot of outpouring and enthusiasm. Well, came Labor Day. I think he announced in July or August. Came Labor Day, and Roger Mudd, who was a famous, very reserved, kind of restrained correspondent for, I think it was ABC, arranged to go to Hyannis, to the Kennedy compound, and interview the new candidate, which he did. And so it was a beautiful autumn afternoon, and the flag was flying, and all that Kennedy wonder that we're familiar with was there, and Teddy was sitting there. And then Roger asked him, well, Senator, why is it that you're running for president of the United States? There was this long, terrible, deadly, historic pause. They show this in political classes to this day and will always show it. And Teddy got this kind of fun, I was actually in that compound several times. Teddy got this funny look and began to say, well, Roger, I think the country now needs, and this went on for 45 seconds to a full minute, which is a long time on television. It became clear that the great senator, he was a great senator, and a friend and all of that, had not thought through the rather basic question of why are you running for president of the United States? And this has forever after become known as the Roger Mudd question, and one that I personally have always asked candidates for mayor, dog catcher, whatever it happens to be. Why is it that you are running for this office, and why do you feel that people should vote for you? So I'm now going to ask Richard the famous Roger Mudd question and see how he does on the great historic scale.
Well, I'm going to try to do better than Teddy Kennedy did. I'm running for supervisor because I want to keep Philipstown the great place it is. That's the bottom line. We all know this is a great community, and it's important to have people lead the community who know that. Every day that I get up, I think, what's best for Philipstown. It's number one of every action, every decision we take at the town board is, will this make the town better? What is in the interest of Philipstown? So that is the fundamental reason I'm running. The other reason is I enjoy it. I enjoy the engagement with the public. I enjoy interacting with the public. I still enjoy it, even though it's been a trying couple of years. Anyone who's followed the zoning and things like that, they know that it's been contentious, but it's been a great opportunity. It's a privilege to serve this town. It really is. This is a great town. These opportunities come along once in a lifetime. So, fundamentally is keeping this town the great place it is, doing what's best for Philipstown, engaging with the public, getting input from the public. Those things are at a small town level. That's the great thing about small town government. We control what happens in our town. We are in direct control. A lot of things are out of our control that happen in Washington or happen at the state level. People feel powerless. But here in this town, your voice is heard. If you want to get involved, you have opportunity to get directly involved. And the job of supervisor is to listen. That is the number one job of supervisor, I think, and take the pulse of the town continuously. And here in this town, it's easy. You know, you're going to run into people in Food Town every day. You're going to get great ideas in the vegetable aisle. So, I mean, that's the great thing about being here. You know, there are 9,800 people, and you're going to see just about every one of them. So it's a great opportunity. Why I think I should be reelected, that's more complicated. I had 8 years on the town board gaining experience. You know, I studied the budget. I was mentored along. It's a long process, that 8 years of learning about the budget. The budget for this town is an incredibly complicated document. It's $9 million worth of line items. And if you miss something, it's going to be painful. It's not only going to be embarrassing, it's going to be extremely painful. Something is not going to get funded and you're going to lose ground. The budget is tight. There, as far as I said, the discretionary portion of the budget is really small. You have to make sure that every dollar you spend is going to be used in the most efficient way. Taxpayers deserve that. They demand that. I have an obligation to provide that to taxpayers, especially now. You know, people have this hyper awareness of taxes. Everywhere I go, and I'm out campaigning now, that is the number one issue. I hear people. And you know, the reason I hear them is because I'm living it. People start to look at you like, oh, he's the supervisor. I'm a town resident. You know, I'm a taxpayer here. You know, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a small business owner. I'm going through the same things that everyone else in this community is going through right now. So I can commiserate with people. You know, I'm empathetic with them. I have firsthand experience to, know what it means to have your business turned down. And I know what it means to have to continue paying the same rate of taxes and supporting things. You know, but the other side of that is we need to fund things in this town. We need to continue growing. We need to repair our infrastructure. We need to have recreation. You know, for our children, we need to support things like the zoning, you know, protect our resources, our natural resources. That's why people come here. And I think I've done a good job of that over the years. You know, I've been vigilant about the budget. We watch where every dollar goes. We've cut where we can cut. Last year I said we cut out $500,000 out of the budget. We still continue to provide services at the highest quality. People didn't notice any drop in service this year. You know, the highway department's still out there fixing roads. Our emergency service providers are still going out there and providing that service, putting out fires, pulling people out of wrecks. Recreation took a 10% cut, but had more programs this year than we've ever seen before. Because people know they got to work harder, they got to work smarter with that money. And that's something we instill in them every day. I take a look at that budget every single day. I look at our bank accounts every day. I look at our banking agreements every day. You have to keep an eye on all the departments and make sure that people aren't exceeding their budgets. You have to track the budget throughout the entire year. So when you get to the end, making sure people are meeting the revenue side of their budget while not overspending. And you know, a lot of things we've done over the past couple of years are going to put us in good stead in the future. We're trying to consolidate positions. I know that's come up. You know, people said, well, why are we going from 3 assessors to 1? Well, if you want smaller government, that's what it's going to take. You know, we don't need 3 assessors right now. We need 1 assessor and a data collector. You know, with that comes 3 benefit packages, 3 retirements. Now, someone in this town can get a job at 25, step out at 55, and by the state of New York law, you got to pick them up forever. So you're tied to that. So if we can go from 3 positions to 1, that's going to become an institutionalized savings in the budget. That's going to help us long term. And it's long term thinking like that that's going to, make it more affordable here and keep young people here. The town taxes are relatively low, and people say, oh, I don't want to hear about the taxes, but the town taxes here are lower than in a lot of places. The increases we've seen over there over the years are a lot lower than any other town in this county, and that comes through vigilance. So, as far as things like passing the zoning, that was a big battle, and it took 5 years. It took the largest meetings we've ever had, meeting with 400 people in an auditorium with a lot of opinions and a lot of fire. It took sitting down with 80 people individually, one-on-one, for 30 minutes at a time. But in the end, we came to a point of consensus, and it was worth every minute of it because we got great input. We started out with 1 document, and we ended up with a document that was greatly changed. It was improved. It was better because we have so many smart, concerned people in this town that were willing to contribute to that document. And that document, of anything that I've done, I'm most proud of because that's going to be the thing that preserves the natural resources in this town. And the natural resources are the things that brings people here. That's the thing that protects public health, protects our children, clean drinking water, open spaces, while at the same time respecting the rights of business owners and controlling growth. Being smart about the amount of growth that you have in your town, not restricting people's rights, but controlling things so we don't have an explosive growth and the school's impacted and your taxes go up. So those are a couple of things. I don't want to go on too long, but I think I've shown a record of accomplishment.
Well, that's actually a good transition to the next question, which is to get specific. We're about halfway through, so it's a good time to get to specifics, which was what are 2 or 3 things, specific things that you would like to accomplish if you're reelected in your case?
Again, it's always, number one, I'm going to keep talking about it, it's always going to be about maintaining, taxes the way they are and keeping an eye on the budget. But that being said, there are specific things I'd like to get done. I would like to improve some of our aging infrastructure. We need to replace the boiler at our recreation center. We have an old boiler there. It's not the most fuel efficient thing. We're working on it now, but we need to get that done. We need to set the example. We need to set the standard for the town. We did replace the boiler in Town Hall and put some insulation in, and we cut our fuel usage 40% in 1 year. That was done with a grant. And I know to some quarters, that's a dirty word, grant, but I'm not naive. Taxpayer money is used for grants, but they're out there. And it's my job to bring that money back here, bring the tax money back to Philipstown. Another thing, as I said earlier, is working with the seniors, making sure that the seniors get the center that they deserve. But not just for seniors. That's going to be a multi-use center. We'll have an ADA compliant meeting room, which we don't currently have. And that, to me, is a source of embarrassment for this town. Everyone should be able to come to the meeting room. When we have big meetings or we have something we think is really contentious, or even if we get a request, we'll have the meeting down to VFW. It's ADA compliant down there, but it's not, it's not a great room. It's a tough place. But again, I'd like to see a senior center. I'd like to have them have a hot lunch program there, have activities that are going to stimulate not only their minds, but their bodies, keep them healthier, and keep them active, and also have a great meeting space for the rest of the town.
I heard, speaking of taxes, you talked quite a bit about tonight. I recall hearing some time ago this discussion, or at least mention of reevaluation
Right.
of the property tax foundation of Philipstown. If you're reelected, is that something that you're looking at?
It's something we've been looking at for a long time. We haven't done a reval, and that's a town-wide reassessment for 16 years. So there's inequity, and we know about it. We've had meetings about it. We've had meetings with the New York State Office of Real Property Services come down and bring data with them that supports this. As an issue of fairness, we need to do a reval. It's a tough thing to do, especially now. The economy hasn't gotten better. You need to fund it. One of the ideas in consolidating the 3 assessors is to take some of the salary, hire a data collector, have that person go around and start getting the data in the system so we can do this reval in-house and save money. That's about the only way we're going to be able to do it, because if you contract out for a reval, not only is it expensive, around $300,000, but it also, you can get a result from someone who's not familiar with your town that may be skewed. So I think it's good to have local teams here that we could hire on a contract basis and provide some local jobs. At the same time, we're not talking about high-paying jobs. Those are $15, $16 an hour jobs, but it will be work. And have people go out with a camera and, verify what are the conditions on all the properties in the town. One idea is that what we're going to do is do a town-wide mailer. We're going to send out everyone's property card to them and say, please verify that this property card is accurate. So that's going to save a lot. And, we're hoping to get good compliance with that. It's going to be in people's best interest to send that back, because it's good to have your data be accurate. You may be overpaying. And one thing we did find out is that some people are overpaying. When you don't have a reval for that long, and property values went up a lot in the last 16 years here, some of the higher end homes are underassessed. While at the same time, you have some lower end homes, some houses in the $300,000 to $400,000 range, which around here is a moderately priced home, that are overassessed. And one of the things we found in sales data is of the 20 lowest selling homes, 16 were overassessed. Of the 10 highest selling homes, those were over $1 million, it was 7 out of 10 were underassessed. So as a matter of fairness, we need to bring that back into balance. It's a matter of equity, because you got to think that someone who's got a home that is in excess of $1 million for sale, or it's sold for over $1 million, that they can afford to pay their share. And just as a matter of fairness, we do need to get this done.
Well, speaking of property taxes, and it's hard to think of a single issue that inevitably affects more people in the town, except perhaps education, but that's not the primary purview of the town board. We can talk about education later, than property taxes. Does anybody have anything they want to say in response to? Go ahead.
I have a question. What do you say to people who would call that redistribution of wealth?
It's just not true. You can't call that redistribution of wealth. What you call it is being fair. If somebody who lives in a $275,000 raised ranch is in essence subsidizing a $5 million home, that's not fair. It's really not fair. So, and somebody living in, I'm not casting aspersions here, but I'm saying the person living in that more expensive home may not even be aware that they're not paying their fair share. And I think a lot of people, as an issue of fairness, do want to pay their fair share. They know that that it's just right to be paying your way. If you have more, and we're not looking at redistributing wealth, we're looking at doing what's right, doing what's equitable.
Anybody else on what should be a number one issue on people's minds?
Certainly is when I go door to door.
Yeah, and when the people doing the reevaluation, should that come to pass, go door to door, I imagine there'll be a fair amount of feelings expressed.
Feelings, yeah.
That doesn't exactly violate a long, hard, learned lesson that I picked up again in some 50-odd years of doing this. That there tends to be just an eerie, odd, but almost universal similarity between where people stand on certain issues and where they sit. So property taxes will probably not be an exception to that when the time comes. Let's see. Yeah, sure.
We actually moved here 16 years ago, and one of the reasons we moved here was because the taxes were so low, and the minute we moved here, we got reevaluated. And it seemed to me quite fair that, we had just bought this house, and it had changed hands a few times, and it seemed fair that our taxes go up. It didn't seem fair to me that people who lived in their houses for generations, that their taxes went up too, when they weren't moving anywhere or going anywhere or whatever. Is there any thought to those taxes coming in at the point of sale rather than just everybody getting?
Well, by state law, if you do a reval, it has to be everyone. You can do vacant property alone, but if you're going to talk about doing residential properties, you have to do everyone. And that comes in, again, with the issue of fairness. But one of the things is, if you're talking about, the thing I get concerned about is senior citizens. People are on a fixed income. Anyone who retires is on a fixed income, and they can't come up with money just because, there happens to be a reval. One thing that has helped them is the state, the program, the STAR program, and the Enhanced STAR. We do get a lot of positive comments about that. There are veterans exemptions, things like that, people with disabilities exemptions that on the local level. We're sensitive to that. And, the assessors are fair. There is a levy in town, though, and that tax levy needs to be met. So, again, that's being distributed by all the properties in town, contribute to the bottom line of the levy. But by state law, once you start the reval, it has to be all the properties.
yes.
More broadly on the issue of taxation, we have a number of overlapping tax districts, taxing entities in Philipstown. Can you talk about a vision for simplifying that?
Now, I'm not. You'd have to be more specific. You're talking about
Well,
school
we have
taxes.
The villages, the school taxes, and the town tax.
Right. It's regarding school taxes. I can't really address that. There is a village tax, and you'll see in the town budget there's an A fund and a B fund. The A is general town-wide. That's everyone. That's the villages, and everything outside the villages. The B fund is what we call TOV, town outside village. they're incorporated villages, they're autonomous governments. So there is an opportunity out there, I'm not saying this is one of our initiatives or anything. I don't want to start any controversy with this. You make a valid point. There's an opportunity to consolidate and have one taxing district. But that being said, consolidation is a real buzzword, and consolidating districts or consolidating services, which we've done quite a bit of, it doesn't always result in lower costs. There are things that need to get done. Roads need to be maintained. We need police services. We need recreation. We do need the schools. So, and they come with a price tag. We just want to make sure that, that price is a valid price. But again, consolidating Nelsonville, Cold Spring, Garrison, Continental Village, North Highlands into one town, it's a possibility, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you would see your taxes go down. There are still services townwide that would need to be provided. And we talk about it, efficiencies, we look at highway. We do a lot of sharing with the village with highway, and we loan them equipment, they loan us manpower. During the hurricane, the village was very good with us. And that goes a long way toward keeping costs lower. We have the machines here to do things. We have certain machines the village doesn't have. We'll loan them to the village or send men down to do that. We also have agreements with the county where we go back and forth and share equipment with the county. We have a lot of shared services with the county. We have shared services with other towns in the area. So those are areas where we can look at efficiencies and keeping taxes low. But as far as consolidating the entire town, it's a valid question, I agree, but I don't see that as lowering taxes or lowering costs. And I don't know if that was the thrust of your question, or I don't know if I've answered it correctly, but I hope so.
Anything else on, oh, yes, ma'am.
On the revaluation, 2 points. I seem to recall, you spoke of the 7 of 10 homes at the higher level being under-assessed. And I recall doing research into this in the past, where basically the homes could be, the values could be challenged, but they were based on comparables that were north of us, Columbia County, Dutchess County, rather than south of us,
Right.
which seemed to skew things towards the lower end in terms of their valuation. I wondered if there was something that could be done to put that more on a truly comparable basis, rather than something, so much farther afield. And the other thing was, could you speak a little bit about farm districts and how they are used sometimes truly for farms, but sometimes for tax benefits?
Okay, just want to make sure I answer both these. You raised a good point there with the local comps. There have been a lot of sales. In 16 years, you get a lot of data also. The assessors are doing data collection all the time, even if it's not about a reval. And that's the important part of having someone who lives here out doing data collection, because they have a better feel for the town, they have a better idea about, about how to collect that data. And, we have Brian Kenny here, who's a professional assessor. He's been doing this for a long time, and he'll be out doing data collection also. They also interact with realtors, they check the sales figures. So a lot of these comps are going to be within the community, the actual sales prices. There are a lot of comparables out there now that they can, garner information from. The problem last time I think you're talking about is there was an outside firm brought in, and I'm not even sure where they were from. They may have been from north of here, and that may have been why they did their comparables from their home district. That's one of the downsides to contracting with an outside firm. You may get skewed data. I'm not saying you can't get good data, but you may get some skewed data, so understand that. But I think having a local person doing local comps and really trying to branch out and say, not going north, or not only solely going north, but looking around. But I certainly wouldn't want to dip too far into Westchester County either, because that could skew things. But I think doing sales figures and comparables from local sales is going to help a lot, and having a local person do that. As far as the ag district was just re-upped. So a lot of people were put out of the ag district for just that reason. They weren't conducting real farming operations. To be in the ag district, you have to have a legitimate farm. And I know what you mean. There were farms on there, I have a quarter-acre farm, or I have a 1/10 of an acre farm. That's That's tough. I mean, and there are micro farms. I'm not saying, that's great. If you're actually conducting farming on an acre of property, more power to you. We need more of that around here. And it's coming down to that, with CSAs and things like that, the community-sponsored agriculture, you do get a lot smaller farms. You can actually have a farm on 4 acres and supply a lot of produce, as is evidenced all over this area. And there's a resurgence in that. We do need to support that. That's great. Having local food is a really important thing. But it's being legitimate, not doing for tax purposes. I understand that. It doesn't give you much of a tax benefit locally, on your local taxes. I don't know how it works out, what the benefits are for federal or state, but locally, you're not getting a big tax benefit. But we do need to support local farms. They do need to be legitimate farms, like you say, actually conducting agricultural activities. And we do support that. That's really important. I can't stress that enough to say that having local access to locally grown food is just vital, and it's something everybody enjoys. With whether it's Glenwood or there's a small CSA in Garrison, or whether people are members of Common Ground, or the Fishkill Farms, it brings people together. It's just a great, great thing.
It is amazing. We're city people. We moved up about 5 years ago, and never had anything like this. And my wife started this small, it's that big or something, farming operation, did it correctly with fencing and all that. And it's just amazing what came out of that 7 square feet. We couldn't give all this zucchini away. We have a small property, but it would not occur to us to try to classify this for farming purposes and take it.
Well, don't try now.
It shows you what a city can. I never even thought of it till I came here. Now I'm going to see what we can look into. Anybody wants some tomatoes? So we have them. We can't get the 12-year-old to eat them. It's the main thing. What happens, you put all this healthy food out thinking, yes, there it'll be. She'll go right for it. There it goes. Looking. Somebody said on Wait, don't tell me. She's looking for where the M&Ms are underneath them, I think. Okay, we go to so slightly sort of hot seaty kind of question, which has been on here. What things do you really strongly support, and what things that you might oppose that the town board's done over the last few years?
I was looking at that question. That's a funny question because, I don't know how other people are going to answer this, but I'm a member of the town board, so I don't per se oppose things that the town board is doing. We have discussions. We have long discussions about issues. We don't always agree on the issues. When it came to the zoning, there were a lot of things, a lot of points of disagreement, even among the board. And any number of things. Recently, we interviewed for a new building inspector, and we had some great candidates come in. I mean, this area is just full of really qualified people, and it was a tough, tough decision. And we sort of took a straw poll before we went public with it. We were doing the interviews, and we just talked about it a lot. And it's an interview process. You want to keep it semi-private to respect people's privacy. And it was gut-wrenching because, number one, it was a job, and it's a good job. And we got it down to 3 really qualified candidates. And, I was pushing for one person, another board member was really pulling for another person, and the 3 other board members were set on one person. And we went round and round for a couple of weeks about this, but in the end, it's majority rules. And it comes down to it, and you have to be able to see other people's points. So we may have heated discussions, we may really sometimes even get angry with each other, but when we leave the room, that stays in the room. That's one thing I will say. We have a really, good working relationship. The board functions, and it keeps government moving. So one of those things was, it came down to, the person that I thought was probably a good candidate, and they were a good candidate, everyone agreed, didn't get the job. But it's majority rules, and we wanted to come out and be able to say to the public, they're all good candidates, they're all qualified candidates, but this is the candidate that the board feels is the best candidate. And it wasn't going to come down to, well, I'm voting against this. I can be swayed. I've changed my mind a lot of times on things, and I can be educated by other board members. They bring a lot to the table. Some things about recreation were contentious in the past. We had long discussions about the rec master plan and to what degree we're going to fund it. And, I am more fiscally conservative than just about anyone. And I don't say that lightly. It came down to an issue of money for me. And I want to see when money gets spent, I want it to have an effect. I want cause and effect when tax dollars are spent. And for me, I was looking at the rec plan and thinking, well, I know a lot of things that have to get done right now, and I'd like to see this money spent on something, but maybe that was a little short-sighted. And, getting a rec master plan avails you to other funding levels that you wouldn't, be availed to if you didn't have a rec master plan. It also sets a vision for the future. We had long meetings about that. I was pretty hot under the collar about it. But in the end, again, majority rules. The board votes, and, you have to leave it. Your nose is out of joint, put it back in joint and move on. That's what happens. I voted against the town budget in my second year on the board, voted against the entire budget over 2 issues, and they came down to money and funding. And in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have. But I did at the time. I was a rookie, and it was gut-wrenching to sit there and vote against the budget. But I did, based on what I thought was a conviction I had. But you gain a lot of experience over the years. You learn that governing is much different than sitting on the sidelines or having a single issue. There are all the issues there all the time. You have to get along, and you have to put the town first. So, that's the way I would go at that.
Yeah, it turns out that's not such a bad question after all. It feels a little weird, but it surfaces interesting things. As I guess the next one inevitably must, what question would you most like me to ask your opponent?
Why aren't you here? No. Moving. And that's a softball. What? And I wish he was here. I really do. I know Lee too. I don't know him real well, but what I do know about him, he seems like a decent person. And I'm sure that he has in his heart the best interests of the town, at heart. But that being said, elections are about qualifications, and they're about accomplishments, they're about achievements, they're about leadership. And the thing that I would ask him is, what in your experience do you bring that you feel qualifies you to be supervisor? And specifically to say, what executive experience, what budgeting experience, what management experience, what leadership experience do you bring that qualifies you to be supervisor? I was on the board for 8 years before I became supervisor, before I ran for supervisor. And, it was a contested election. We campaigned just like we always do. We get out there and we run on our records. We run on our accomplishments. We run on what we've done for the entire town. So again, just getting back to my question would be, what do you bring that qualifies you for this office?
Okay, and what question would you most like me to ask you?
Do you want a donut?
Now, that's where experience shows.
No, I'm just, it's a tough job. You got to make tough decisions all the time, every day. You're going to make decisions that are going to make people unhappy, and they're going to dislike you just for maybe one issue. And that's a tough thing. This is a small town. So the question, that I would want to be asked is, what is the overall impression you'd like to leave people with? And, that overall impression is that I'm a community member. As I said, my family's been here for 5 generations. I was born here. I went to school. I took music in this room. So above all, I'm a community member. I'm a taxpayer here. My mom lives here, still in my heart. She's still alive. Unfortunately, she's in a nursing home now. But, my family's been here a long time. As I said earlier, I'm a husband, a father. My son Nolan is here tonight. He's right over there. He takes music in this room now. But, I do things for the town because I think they're the best things for the town. We consult with the board. These aren't unilateral decisions. We really do take our time, and as is evidenced by the zoning and the comprehensive plan, it was 10 years of time. But it's better to take your time and get things right than to have a knee-jerk reaction and do something that's going to damage the town. I care about the town deeply, and that's why I want to continue as supervisor. So the overall impression I want to leave with people is, I'm a community member. I'm your neighbor. I'm a father. I have a small business here. I'm a husband. And I share a lot of the same concerns you share.
Okay, we're getting close to the hour, but I did promise readers that we would use a few of the questions that they responded by sending in. And the one that, let's do first, there are only two that really hit here, is a topic that hasn't been mentioned tonight, but I know is, I know all too well is quite controversial, and that is emergency services. Someone wrote the question this way. They wanted to know particularly, quote, why the incumbents support the Grainer report, and if they feel it was a, quote, successful expenditure of time and taxpayer money. And the question would also like the opinion of the other candidates, but we'll do that in the second half.
So for anybody who's not familiar with the Grainer report, which is not really the Grainer report, it's the emergency services report. That was a comprehensive report study done of our emergency services. And I know Nancy's going to want to address this later on. John had a good hand in this. But we spend $2.1 million a year on emergency services. Now, that demands a close look. That's a big number. And for us to sort of run away from that because it could get controversial, it could make somebody uncomfortable, that's not what we do. That's not what we're elected to do. We're elected to keep an eye on taxpayer money. And we do that day in and day out. The Grainer report came out. I looked at it. I'm like, oh, God. You know, this is going to be controversial. We just came out of the zoning, and now we got the Grainer report, or the emergency services report. It was harsh. It was overly harsh, and I said that publicly. It's still a small town. These are still volunteers. But is it worth looking at? Absolutely. You have to look at where taxpayer money is being spent. $2.1 million, a lot of money. And that needs to be spent in the most effective and efficient way. And we're not looking at saying, well, we want to strip these departments. We want to make sure that the members are safe, that they have what they need, that they're getting the training they need, they have the equipment they need, and that we're spending money on equipment that we really do need, that it's having the best effect when there is an emergency. So the report came out. Nobody tried to hide from that report. We had a meeting, I think, John, it was the day that report came out with a meeting. We had a meeting like 2 days later in the town where we presented it. We had a meeting down at the rec center. We had over 100 people come, and Ron Grainer himself presented that report. During his presentation, I actually stopped him because I thought he was going too far. I thought he was doing damage. But that being said, there are a lot of valuable things in that report, things that need to be brought to the fore, things that need to be addressed. No one's hiding from that report. A lot of things have already been acted on. We went around with the fire companies, met with them to make sure that they're getting the training they need, making sure that their budgets are where they should be, making sure they have the equipment they need. And just as community relations, it was a good thing because it brought all the firemen together. They're all talking about one issue. But they also branched out into a lot of other issues. And it was worth doing. It's still worth pursuing. We're still pursuing this. We'll pick and choose. That's our report now. That's no longer the Grainer report. That's our report. We own that report. But we don't have to do everything that's in there. That's the great thing about local government. We'll use what works in Philipstown out of that report.
Good. Well, sort of a believer in being hard to save souls after the hour, so we're about at the hour. Is there anything you particularly want to say before I close this?
I want to say thank you. It's a great opportunity for me to see everybody. I'm glad that there's this many people here. That is a good sign, and that's important for democracy. Participation is number one. And that was one thing that the former supervisor used to say to me, you know, you can put it out like a buffet, but who comes, nobody knows. You know, what you take away is what you're going to get out of local government. And we encourage participation. I know it's an election year. You're going to hear a lot of heated rhetoric. You're going to see things that are inappropriate on some scale. We're trying to take the high ground in this. I am trying to keep it about the issues, trying to keep it about accomplishments and things that are good for the town. So, I think that I'd like to get your support. I hope you'll give it to me, and we're going to have a great town. It's going to go forward, and I think it's well worth preserving with all the things we've done.
Well, this has been a very, very good discussion from my point of view, and I hope from yours. I, again, am sorry that Lee was not there. I've no other reason I didn't get to show off my fairness skills. I've been working very hard on them. In fact, the biggest concern I had was that I would be so eager to demonstrate impartiality and fairness and whatever the concerns were, that poor Richard would have come on the short end of it, because I would have cut him off all the time and had everything. So I didn't get to do that. But I'm also sorry for another reason, which is I sense, and I'm a newcomer here, but when I first came, that's about 5 years, I didn't sense the undercurrent of kind of party identification, partisan dimension to a town of 9,000 people. And I've spent my life in it, in the larger world, in the city of New York as what is now a deputy mayor for policy, in the White House and other places. And I was kind of just beguiled at first by the thought that there could be a community where the civic considerations were based on the problems the community faced and the people stepping forward to face them, not importing the stuff that I hope to get away from. And I will be sorry if this dynamic takes over here, and I hope that it is not beginning to do so, because however this election turns out, I think we all want it to be what's best for this small town. So thanks for being this part of it.
Thank you.
Okay, keeping promises here, let's start with the very first question that you all know. This will be a little harder because we have 3 people, so I will have to kind of enforce time a little bit.
I'll be quick.
But it's going to be simpler if you all do it for me, so I don't have to, kind of interrupt, and then I'm not being fair to one and fair to the other. And the easiest way to avoid lots of that is don't attack each other, and then I don't have to give everybody else equal time.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay. Good. Phew. All right. So let's. Okay. We're doing reverse alphabetical order. So let's start with Barbara Scucciamara, who I think you all know, and ask her what she believes the most serious challenges we face as a town are in the next 2 years, and what do you propose to do about it?
Well, forgive me, I have to kind of look at my notes. I'm not as eloquent as Richard, that he can keep going. But first and foremost, I believe it's taxes. As Richard said, budget, taxes, they kind of go hand in hand. We can't lower them, unfortunately. I wish we could. But we can make the most of our tax dollar. Oh, okay. Looking for better ways to run the government, re-engineering how the government thinks, running it more like a business. These things, we have to be careful of our spending, and it's all about efficiency. We need to stop waste, share services. I hate to say consolidate, because that's such a buzzword, as Richard already said. But there's a lot of ways that we can reduce spending and just be smart about our dollars. Going into Butterfield Hospital property, I think, would be the best for the community. Bringing all services together, the courts, the seniors, maybe the fire department in Cold Spring. I think that would be just a win-win situation. That's about all I have there.
Good. Nancy.
Well, thank you. I just want to say thank you for coming out. It's an honor to be here in this room where I first learned about community. So I'm thrilled to be at my alma mater. The most serious challenges, let's face it, the most challenging years in decades have been during the past 2 years in Philipstown. What we face moving forward is an even bigger challenge. Our hefty source of revenue, the mortgage tax rebate, has been diminished by about $1 million in the past 5 years. Costs are up, unfunded mandates are up, and revenues on all fronts are down, with the exception, really, of recreation. So we'll beat the odds, hopefully, of the decline of the small town, which we've all been witness to everywhere. I think I'll incorporate maybe some of the next question of what I will do, because that was sort of in the first question. I'd like to continue, basically, the path we've been on, making decisions that will maintain our quality of life while keeping our government solvent. This will take some restructuring, like Barbara said. I don't know in the sense of a business, but we do need to restructure our antiquated system. We need long-term planning. I've been a part of this process over the past 4 years, where we have reduced the tax burden by finding efficiencies. The number one challenge, I think, is healthcare costs. We're one of the very few local governments in New York State that has their employees pay into their health insurance. It's a very difficult decision on my part that I'll address later. But I think as we move forward, as we instituted during my 4 years too, new employees will pay a larger percentage into their premium. Other options that I will look at will be to determine how many employees have an alternative source of health care. Maybe have them sort of take payment in lieu of health insurance. This would save us money, and it would give them more money in their low paycheck. The town saves, money in the long run with that. I think another way, one of the big challenges still is healthcare, and one of the things that we could look at are self-funded or municipal cooperative health insurance plans. That's taking a look at the school, the two villages, Garrison School. These are all taxing entities. I think New York State has a plan where if you have 5, you can enter into a cooperative agreement and possibly share and save money that way, bring some costs down. I think the challenge is also in retirement benefits. For new employees, I think we need to look at the same kind of structure. We need to take a good hard look at these alternatives. Also, maybe establishing a reserve fund for employee benefits so that we can offset the costs of retirement and health insurance, so we don't, get caught stuck in a situation where we're in trouble. And at the rate these benefits are increasing, we will face a shortfall. The other huge challenge, I think, and one that we are addressing because there's been a call to action for the long-term planning of our roads. Our Smart Planning Town Supervisor, Richard Shea, has called for a roads committee already. Using their input and some professional expertise, I'm looking forward to establishing a long-term plan for our roads. The roads belong to all of us. The opinion driven by one person or one group is not in the best interest of the community, and I'd like to build consensus so we can provide for all the option and make sure the community has all the information necessary for planning for our public roads. So to wind it up, basically the two challenges that I've just laid out, they lie continuing to do what we've been doing, systematically restructuring our antiquated system, reduce the tax burden by finding efficiencies. That's it.
Okay. Good.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming also, and thank you for the opportunity, Gordon. It's a nice crowd. Thank you for coming out. I think I'd like to answer both the first and second question. I think they're incorporated. As far as I'm concerned, they're linked. So maybe that'll speed things up for you. I think Nancy might have done the same. Obviously, as everyone's going to say, it's the budget and being vigilant and going line by line and looking at the budget and keeping that in check. I think if we had the answers to that basically maybe we'd be running for higher office. I think that it's a very difficult situation when you have the economy the way it is. You're trying to provide basic services for people, and you have to do it in a strained economy with a strained budget. So I don't know if we have the answers to that. I think it's being vigilant. I think it's getting as much input as you can from people. One thing I've learned on this school board, there are a lot of people that have some great ideas, and you have to listen. So I'd say budget's number one, and we have to listen to the people. And, as a board member, I would, and I'm sure they have, is just really go line by line and see if there's any options to cut costs. I think the second most important, it's going to be short-term, but it's been a chronic problem, are the roads. Irene exacerbated that, and now we have, some serious problems on all of our dirt roads. It's a serious issue that'll be controversial. There's people that say that why should we be supporting that, and, we don't get any benefit from it. And on the other hand, there's people that are paying very high taxes that like that. So it'll be a contentious discussion, I believe, but I think it's one that has to be met. I think we have to have a study, which Richard has started, or a committee to study the roads conditions and really see what the options are. And it doesn't have to be one blanket answer for all of the roads, but there are some serious conditions. I'm a contractor, I ride all those roads. There are some roads that wash out every other day, and that's a high cost, and it's a continual cost. So we have to take a look at everything, get all the data that we can on the roads from our highway superintendent and input from the community and address that issue. I think sales tax from Putnam County, we have to look at that, and we have to get our fair share. We have to have someone, we have to start another committee, if you will. I'm a believer in committees. I think we should have a committee to actually study that, to see what other towns are paying into it, what they're getting out of it, and we should do the same with ours and see if it's proportional, and if it's not, then we should be lobbying and we should be getting our fair share, and that might be more of a revenue share. Richard talked about, bringing people in here, and a lot of people coming from New York and spending money on our restaurants, and all that money and all that sales tax is going to one pool, and we need our fair share of it. Another thing through, just talking to people while we're out campaigning a bit, down in Continental Village, there's a disparity in taxes by two different neighbors can be paying as much as 6% difference depending on which school district they go to. I think we can help them by, getting a conversation going. I believe there is a workshop scheduled with Sandy Galoff to actually address this issue, but it's a big issue for the people in Continental Village that should be addressed. And lastly, our facilities. We're not ADA compliant. If someone wants to go to a meeting, pretty much you have to bring your mountain gear to get to the second floor, and it really limits people's accessibility to the town hall, and it has to be addressed one way or the other, whether it's short-term or long-term. We have to become compliant. We have to make some investments in these things, and we have to pretty much sell this to the people and let them know this is totally needed, or we wouldn't be doing it at this time. To have facilities the way they are, that are, not energy efficient and that you can't even actually get to is, kind of embarrassing. And so I think we should really address those issues if we can within the budget, which I think we can.
Okay, before I do what I did at the previous block, and since this is about issues facing the town, I invite people to have some questions or thoughts. I want to follow up on something that I hadn't really thought about very much in relation to Philipstown, but is clearly deeply affecting most larger public jurisdictions in the United States, and that is employee benefit costs. And you touched on, as you, Barbara, I wonder if you've been on the town board. I don't even know, as a citizen, what dimension of our budget is involved here and what flexibility we have in this area.
We don't have a lot of flexibility with that, unfortunately. And the tough decision that the town board had to make was having the employees pay a portion of that. And you can't always do what, you have to do what you feel is right in your heart. It's not always going to win you votes, or it's not always going to be favorable. Is it something I said?
We're going to need...
You can't
This is
make
the part where Barbara struck on the other candidate.
We're going to need a Haldane maneuver here.
You can't make everybody happy, and if you try to do that, you're not going to win. But healthcare is a major concern for us, and it's something that, like Richard said, with the assessors cutting down to one, I mean, that's going to save a lot of money down the road. It really is.
If I can just address it from like a school standpoint. I mean, it's huge, but what you're doing is you're fighting unions also. It's not like, it has to happen through contract negotiations. In our case in the school, it's like you're up against the most powerful union in the country, maybe the world. So, and you were already, already set back one step when you're in negotiations because of the way it's all set up. So I think it has to do with negotiating. I'm not sure exactly. School law and municipal are totally different beasts. So I'm not sure exactly how the negotiations have been going with CSEA or whoever else is involved. But that's the place where you have to negotiate how much, what benefits you are giving, and you have to reach some kind of consensus agreement with the other parties, and that's not always easy.
How does it work with the highway department in terms of...
Well, it works
They're
differently with the
CAC.
highway
They're the
department
union.
than than our civil servant employees. They are the union that is negotiated in their contract. I believe they pay more into their health insurance than our civil servant employees do.
They do.
And our regular employees do. The employee benefit that we offer to the town employees outside of highway, we can determine that. And it's a very difficult thing to work out. We cut our own benefits. We cut dental completely. That's a tough thing.
Yeah.
When you look at the salaries that these people have after working in town for 15 years, 20 years, and not making more than $40,000 a year, and then you're cutting into their health benefits. That's a really hard decision, but these are the hard decisions that we have to make, and a lot of times they're unpopular. But I think my idea would bring us up to at least the state norm, and state employees, and we get the state insurance plan, the state health insurance plan. And we've done that. We've brought ourselves up to what the state does with the night shift plan. Not any other, or not many other local municipalities have done that. So again, we're doing these things, we're ahead of the game.
Well, anybody here old enough to remember the mayoral administration in New York City of John B. Lindsay? In which I was executive for policy. I've had some kind of experience with the garbage piling up to the moon, the cops screaming and yelling, the teachers walking out. What didn't happen? The issue of how you manage labor well without so demoralizing your municipal workforce that you can't get jobs done.
It was excuse me, it was a very tough decision because a lot of the employees that work in town hall came to town hall with a lower salary, knowing that they were going to have health benefits, and that for them leveled it out. And then we had to ask them to pay into it, and it was really a hard decision to make.
Anybody now from the floor want to raise anything with our candidates for the town board about the kinds of issues we've been talking about in this section that we talked about in the same section with Richard?
Oh, good.
Okay, if not, we will, it's amazing, here we have two for town board, and, okay, wait till you get them privately, I guess. Well, then let's do the Roger Mudd question, since everybody knows it's coming, and that is...
Oh,
Do we switch order now, or no?
Yeah, we can switch order.
We don't have to.
Why don't we do that? You're going to be in the middle each time, so unless you want to switch chairs.
well, I don't know what card I'm on.
I was trying to say that.
That's a classic. I'm going to use that in a class. Okay, but the names will be protected. Okay, here it is. Drum roll. Think carefully. Why are you running for this office? And why do you believe you should be elected to it, David?
Oh, wow, me first? Well, actually, it's not. It's. I can understand Ted Kennedy because I've been asked that question on different things that I thought I knew about or just was living with, and what is art or something. I thought I understood, and someone popped that question to me one time, and it was like didn't really have a defined answer. So I can sympathize with Ted. God rest his soul. I'm running because, first of all, I have a deep appreciation for Philipstown. I've lived here my whole life. I'm fourth generation, not fifth. Richard's up me one. And I have concerns for the future of Philipstown and the direction some people might want to take it. I feel it's a delicate balance, and I think we need people in office that are going to be working to keep the same quality of life that we have now and have grown to be accustomed to and respect. And that's my major reason for running.
Mayor?
Yep.
So after living in various parts of the country for about a decade, I came back to Philipstown in 2000. It wasn't too long before I attended this 3-day conference at this school where it was residents coming together to share their ideas about the future of our town. So I'm running for re-election because I like the collaborative approach and the roadmap that was being established back then. It was initiated by the residents and our government. The town board began the process of developing a strategy to preserve the character of our town. I intend to see those community-driven plans reach their goals. By nature, I'm a consensus builder, and I enjoy using those skills to implement our community goals. After 4 years of hard work, I'm still motivated every day by the challenges that face Philipstown, whether it's a new zoning code, ensuring the safety, efficiency, and sustainability of our emergency service systems, listening or fighting for our seniors to make sure that their services are kept in Philipstown, rebuilding after Irene. I intend to be part of that plan, and that's why I'm running.
Next. Well, I've been in office for 4 years. I love what I do. The salary is a big draw. I've
But what
lived
is the salary for town board member?
$17,000. So I compute that to be about $2 an hour, or is it less than that probably?
Depends on,
Yeah.
depends.
Sub-minimum wage.
I've lived here a long time. I'm not going to tell you how long, because then you'll be able to figure out how old I am. I've worked on Main Street for 12 years in a business. I've worked in Garrison. I have started my own small business. I have a good sense of what the community needs, and I love being a part of it. It's been a wonderful experience for me. I cross party lines, and I'm a good communicator. And I feel I would like to continue, so if you don't mind, just vote for me.
Okay, and by the way, we are not going to make this run an hour. If it goes 45 or it goes what it goes, we will stop when we're done. Now, the 2 or 3 specific goals that you've set for yourself, if you are elected, or in Nancy's case, because now it's her turn to go first,
Oh, my God.
re-elected.
It goes back to restructuring our antiquated system, reduce the tax burden by finding more efficiencies, continue the dialogue with our emergency services. It's critical that our town has the best, the safest, and the most efficient emergency response network, and I'm determined to ensure that it works for our volunteers and our residents alike. You see, towns can't provide fire service like villages and cities do. We must rely on independent districts or contract arrangements with service providers. This results in more government entities, inefficiencies, and duplication. It's a time when we're all calling for less government. So if this barrier of more government can't be broken or eliminated because of community consensus, then at least I can open this crack that I've made by initiating the conversation, and I can make that wider. I'd also like to standardize local elections for fire districts, school districts, library referendums, and all those votes that we have. We need one uniform election date to increase the democratic participation and voter participation. So I hope to be part of the roads committee. If I'm not, that's okay. I don't need to be an appointed member like I did with the zoning. I was unofficially attending the zoning committee meetings, and I would like to do that with the road committee. I hope to engage in the county's hazard mitigation plan. It never got off the ground because of lack of participation with the other municipalities. But I'd like to take it and adapt it to reflect the needs of Philipstown. This plan would address our needs and incorporate common sense solutions for our vulnerable infrastructure and road systems. I'll also continue to advocate for our seniors by moving forward on securing an appropriate center. I'll continue to fight for them in difficult times, like when their services were going to be cut. I've done that in the past. And I just, I want to continue the work that I've established so far. I don't feel like it's finished, and there's a lot more to do. So those are my goals.
Dave?
I guess the first thing would be, which is short-term, hopefully, is to learn as much as I possibly can to help the board in any capacity that I'm able to. I know there's a lot to learn, a lot of intricacies, things that I don't know about. I know I'm smart enough to know I'm not just going to jump in and change the world, so I think it'll be a learning experience at the beginning. I do have a lot of experience in many areas, but I think there will be some challenges that I'll have to meet and hopefully be mentored by whoever's on the board and work with them. Long term, I'd like to put a dent in all the challenges that we've all, stated tonight. We have to move forward. We can't just, decide what they are and not have and make plans but never accomplish anything. And I'd like to make sure things move ahead. I don't want things to just go to that that one area where it's this is what we should do. This is our 5-year plan. Never do anything with it. So establish what we can do, what we will do, like roads, for instance. If it's paving sections, if whatever it is, let's get it done and let's move things forward. And I guess that's about it for now.
This is moving right along. I like it.
Those are just a couple of things.
Yeah.
This was a tough question for me because there's so many, as a town board member, and Nancy will contest to this, there's so many things that come up every week that you have to work on. But the 3 that really hit home for me were court consolidation. I've been working on that for a while now. We have 3 courts within a mile of each other. It's ridiculous. I've kind of put it on hold for a while because I really wanted to, I have this vision of the 3 courts being at Butterfield, but I think that's coming a little slower than I had anticipated, so I would really like to move forward to take Nelsonville and move it into Philipstown. That would eliminate, and the cost savings would be quite good for Nelsonville, which would reflect on all of us. The roads definitely need to be addressed. I'm not a fan of committees. I find that you establish a committee and it's going to take longer. I think you go right to the source, and that's Roger. You sit with Roger, and Betty and I have spent a lot of time at Highway, and he'll tell you exactly what we need to do, and I think that's the way we should go with that. Dirt roads, I've lived on a dirt road the whole time I've been in Philipstown, and I love the look of a dirt road. But now that I'm wearing this other hat, I see where our taxpayer dollars are being washed away every storm. Now, I'm not a proponent of paving everything, but I think in areas that wash out continually, this is something we have to address. And as far as environmentally looking at this, I was always say, oh, you can't, pervious surface is not good. It's clogging our wetlands. It's killing our wetlands. They're not doing their jobs anymore. That's why we have so much of a drainage problem. Which brings us to our MS4. I've been working on our state mandate for stormwater management. From the years 2005 to 2009, we spent $40,000 on a consultant for stormwater. In 2009, the board decided to let him go, and we have taken it over ourselves. And we just had an audit this week, and thank goodness we didn't get fined. We have some recommendations, but I would like to take on that along with David Klotzel, our wetlands inspector, and Kevin from our building department. I think we'll be able to handle that, and that'll save the town a considerable amount of money. And I could go on, but that's enough.
Can I make a comment, rebutting a bit? As far as committees go, like I said previously, I'm a committee person. I don't believe in listening to I don't know what it is, but I've never been able to just listen to one person and believe exactly what they say. And that's where I think a committee comes in, because different eyes on any given subject might give you different ideas. So Roger may be a go-to person, and I would have faith in him, but I wouldn't leave out the opportunity to have other people giving their opinions on what can be done, and maybe there's things that Roger doesn't know about.
You could talk to him about that.
Well, I wouldn't be afraid to.
May I?
Yeah, no, this
okay?
is good. This is
Okay.
fine, yeah.
I too believe that this one subject really requires the input of the entire community. We could have a committee, that's great, but this has been a subject that's been on the table for decades now. We do have a road study that was done in the early 90s. We have some very concerned residents who insist that they all need to be paved. There's lots of different opinions. There are other environmental solutions to the dirt roads, rather than paving. I think it could be a balance of these community members, some professionals, and Roger. Takes a great deal of skill at engineering these roads to do them right. And I think we really need someone who is an engineer at some point to assess the whole system at some point. And I think, I'm not going to claim to know that there are drainage problems in this. I know what the residents have told me, and the reasons they think their roads are washing out, and they're there in front of them every day. So I would like to have and I know Roger's out there every day too, but these people live it. They see it in their basements, they see, their yards destroyed by it, and I think it's important to take their input too. They own the roads too.
Just a point of clarity, I wasn't considering not having Roger involved, completely with this whole project. I think he would be an integral part of it. I just think other people's opinions should also be heard.
Okay. And let's go to another question that could elicit some different opinions about things, and this is probably a better question for you guys than for the supervisor one, things you you support and aren't so enthusiastic about, if not opposed, the town board has done over the last couple of years. Barbara, let's start with you first.
Well, I support the new zoning. I think it's a great document. It's a work in progress. We had a lot of input from the business community. We changed a lot of things. We modified it. We're concerned with the needs of the business people, and that's what we did. We changed things there. I believe in my heart that we'll look back on this in 20 years and we'll say, thank God we did it. Because when you look at all around our area, you look at Fishkill, I grew up in Putnam Valley. It's awful over there. Across the river, when you look at all the buildings on the mountains, it's a shame. So I believe that's one of our great achievements. Now I get to the opposed part. That's hard because, I'm on the board, and we do this as a unit. But the fire study, I believe, was a disaster. It was done in the best intentions. It was done so we could look at our emergency services, but it turned out that we just antagonized our firemen, who are so important to us. The goal was to take an inventory of our emergency services, which we need to do. We really need to do that. It was a good idea, but a bad approach, unfortunately, and now we need a mediator. I believe at the end, we'll work through it, and these firemen will see that sharing services and communicating is really the best thing for the town. The other one that I wasn't as big support of was the gun law, and I lost my card. But it wasn't our place to question the Constitution of the United States. As a board, we're part-time people. We have to make really good use of our time and spend it wisely, as we should spend our money wisely.
Okay. Nancy, do you want to go next?
The things I support, obviously the zoning, that's old news. Let's move on. There's a lot of things that I support that we're working on now. And one is the continued work of addressing and evaluating and assessing and making sure it's safe is the fire and emergency response network. We will take some of the things out of the RFG consulting report. We'll throw some things out. But that is one thing that I strongly support, and I strongly support the initiative to continue this preparedness planning that we have been working on. For the first time, we did set up a local emergency operations center that will be further developed. Obviously, it's necessary. Look what happened during Irene, and it was a great collaborative effort with Ralph Falloon and John Van Tassel, all the fire departments. It just reminded me of how important planning is and preparedness. When we got, the news about Irene, I got the ball rolling that Thursday when I heard from the county and they said, we're going to set up a shelter in Carmel on Route 6. And I said, okay, I didn't even really pay attention to that. I immediately got on the phone with all the fire departments who, possibly didn't appreciate me, but I got on the phone with every fire department, and they generously opened their doors to the whole community and offered welcome centers in each department. So, that's something that I'm strongly supporting. There are plenty of other things that I'm supporting, lots of initiatives that, the roads committee I will certainly support. And even if I'm not appointed to the committee, I'll sit there and go to the meetings unofficially. Things that I didn't support, there's when you work with a group of people, you sort of. I'm the youngest of 9 kids, and it's fun and difficult to live in a small house with that many people and disagree. But you know what? When you all have to get into the car together someday to drive to grandma's, you have to at some point get it together and sort out all your differences. And no, you can't wear my shirt. No, you can't wear my shoes. Those are the kinds of things that we do. No, you can't do that, Nancy. We don't want you to initiate that emergency service study. Maybe let's. I have ideas that sometimes I vet personally with each board member. Before I bring it to the table. And one of the things that I had a really hard time with, but I realized in the end it was for the good of this whole community, was the health insurance issue. I didn't want to walk into the rec building after that vote, but I knew it had to be done. I knew if we were going to continue with the percentage increases that we were facing every year with health insurance, we had to do something. And then the other thing that I had a hard time with, but I wasn't going to hold up the whole process of the zoning, was I didn't want the ridge lines to come out of that document. And you know what? Maybe my goal for the next 4 years would be to put those ridge lines back in.
Well, first of all, I've joined the campaign and the Democratic team because I believe in what they've done over the years and the direction they're going. I think the most important thing is our land and our property and our natural surroundings, and I think we should protect it. So I think it was the responsible thing to do. From everything I saw, I know you see complaints in the paper by a few people that just I think like to complain anyway, that they weren't heard or whatever. But I witnessed the meetings. I've gone to the big meeting that we had right here in the halls, and pretty much Richard and the town were open to everyone's suggestions. He met personally one-on-one with anyone with a problem, and he changed the document, and I'm not sure what else you can expect from a leader. I think that was the way to go. I haven't seen any other complaints or whatever, with a complete description of what exactly the problem was, or a person that has lost out on this. You just don't see that, or if it's there, I haven't seen it. So I'm totally supportive of that. The EMS study, I support that. I think it was a responsible thing to do, but I think it is a case study on how things can go wrong and how they did go wrong. First of all, you have people's perception of why the study's happening. Then you hire a person that gets no information because there's a suspicion going on, and so he has to act and create a study on no input from each of the departments. Then you have a person that's upset about that who writes a caustic review, which irritates everyone even further and just completely splits everything and blows everything up. So the reason for it was consolidation. The reason for it was a responsible reason. It was looking at, at the services and the money spent and making sure it was money that was spent well. It wasn't an attack on anyone, but that's how it was perceived. And then from there, everything, I think, did go south. I think John Van Tassel, for sure, has been involved in working this out and trying to pull things together. I think it's still strained. I would hope that everyone could get together on this and actually, work together on some type of a solution. I don't know all of the, the definite pieces of this, but I know that it's for the better of the community if we know that our money's being well spent, that the people that are serving us are being respected and are also have the right equipment. And if there are things that should be cut, maybe they should be. And it's not a personal attack. And like people have said, when you start cutting things, people take it personally, and that's one of the problems. Just on the gun law, one thing I think you should question things when they come up. I don't know if I was on the board, it would be like, and if somebody had threatened me, maybe I would have acted in a different way. If you're sitting on the sidelines, it's like, well, the guy said this, whatever. And how you would enforce a gun law of this type, I'm not sure how that could be done. But I do think you should question it. I don't think a gun is in place in a school or in a community center with children or in a meeting that can get heated. That said, I'm not sure how you would ever, accomplish, stopping people from doing that unless you spent a lot of money. So, it's not that I was for or against that. I think it was a reaction, and then it was rescinded, I believe, and I think that was the right thing to do also. So those are the things that I support. Things that I don't think I oppose much that's going on. I think I would just, if I was on the board, I think maybe the communications should be at a different level, and hopefully, look at things before they happen and try to nip them in the bud. And, I don't know if that's always possible, but I'm pretty good at identifying problems before they happen. So I think I'd be an asset to the board in that respect. And I think that's, about it. I think the communications, it's not that I oppose it. I think they could have been better. And I think the studies could have moved ahead more smoothly.
Okay, now we come to,
Can I
Yeah, you want- yeah,
offer
sure, go
some
ahead.
rebuttal
Sure,
here? I mean, I think Barbara
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Dave both
Yeah.
touched on the approach of the emergency services study. And I'm not quite sure what their opinion of the approach was, so I would like to hear
Yeah.
that. If what was the approach? I've heard twice that I think the approach was wrong. So what is the criticism about the approach? You supported it, you voted unanimously with the rest of the board for the study. The information was presented to the public
I believe-
all through the timeline that we were
I think-
applying for the grant, we were receiving the grant, we hired the consultant. They're in the minutes, you were at those meetings, you could read it in the paper. Then the letters started coming to the different districts. So the districts, I'll say possibly, maybe I should have written to the districts and asked for permission to apply for that grant first. All the districts were well aware that we were doing this, that we wanted to take a look at this. And I do have to point out, too, that the reason for the study was not for consolidation. The reason for the study is that my first responsibility as a town board member is to provide for the public safety of the citizens and the volunteers. And that was the reason for the study, to make sure that we were providing the best, safest, efficient service that we could. So when you look at the timeline, it's well planned out. It's at the town hall, you can foil it. When you look at 11/17 letter sent out to each department, letting them know that we were going to do this. 12/7 asking for contact information. By the way, personal phone calls from me to the departments, but the criticism of that was that that's not how you contact them. I don't know how else to contact them. But you know what? Guess what? I'm over it, beyond it. Maybe the approach wasn't what everybody wanted, but when I approach my kids and ask them for something and they say, well, I don't like the way you talk to me, I'm sorry. Maybe the approach was bad. I still don't know what was wrong with the approach. People say the approach was bad, but I don't know what the approach was that was bad about it. If you look at all the black and white, I can't see it. So moving forward, we're beyond that. We're working on things. Great things have come. There's more positive publicity for the fire departments. They are doing more trainings together as they have in the past. It's not that they haven't done that. They're addressing safety issues. I'm addressing safety issues. I did emergency preparedness planning training with NIMS, FEMA, 100, 200. I should be at 300 right now at Garrison Fire Department, but I'm here. So the approach, I don't quite understand what that is about the approach.
Well, I don't think that that's what I was saying was the approach. I believe that the study and how it started was fine. I think it was the perception from the EMS, the people in charge of the EMS, of what was going on. And I don't think that was made clear to them. And if it was, I don't think they understood it. And I think maybe it should have been maybe more than the phone call. I don't think the approach wasn't. I think all the information was there. But this is a small town, and people get, through the grapevine or through gossip or whatever, have a feeling of what this study was about, and that's, you know, they didn't perceive it for what it was. So.
Well, they didn't perceive the zoning that way either, and it smells of the same things that what happened with the zoning. The document wasn't even dry yet, and there were all these rumors about it. People hadn't even read the document, and I was walking into the rec department where I saw posters with guns on them saying they're taking away your rights. People reacted. I'm sorry that they reacted that way, but people perceived it. They created their own opinion because it is a small town. Yes, I understand that, but I'll work on my approach.
Barbara, I think you have.
I know it's very passionate for Nancy, and I understand that. But the end result is, I believe the firemen at this point are communicating better. They're sitting down at a table, mediator or not mediator, and they're talking about what's important to them and how they can get along better. And if anything comes out of the study, if that works, that's good for me.
It did seem to just an observer that somehow, and I don't know how because I was involved in the development, that it became about the consolidation question and not about the problems in delivering emergency services in a very varied town that ranges from a tightly packed urban center to places where it can be difficult for fire trucks to even function. And I don't know how that happened, but somehow the big C word seemed to have taken over the whole issue. And from the limited experience I've now had in trying to be on the ground a little bit here, it seems much more complicated than that. And that the individual nature of the departments cuts both ways. On the one hand, you could say, yes, there's some inefficiencies. On the other hand, I know how difficult it is to get people to volunteer and participate and how much it takes out of everybody to do that. And if loyalty to a unit and a feeling of togetherness in a unit is key to motivating people, as it is in other areas that I've worked in, it's an apple and orange. It's a complex trade-off, but somehow if the thing could not be seen as see or not to see, but how to better get people participating, I'm concerned that more people like me who move up here don't get involved. And one of the things I want to take on personally is some kind of crusade that just about everybody that lives here has to readjust from having the fire departments that we're used to saying, why isn't everybody who lives here involved in some way in helping our emergency services? I can't think of a reason why I could live here and not be, and I don't see why anybody else should either, so we're going to make a kind of crusade out of this.
I think that's just a common thing across the country, and consolidation is a buzzword right now, and I don't like it, because I don't think that we've done the research to really understand whether or not that will save us money. I know that if we do consolidate some of our taxing entities, that's what's directly related to our aid and incentives for municipalities. That's the state funding that we get. And the more we prove that we are sharing services or fiscally responsible, the more money we get from the state. So is consolidation the answer? Again, I'm still not there. Sharing everything is always the answer, so that's all. I took great risk to initiate this, and I was told by anybody I knew in government not to touch it, but I did.
I think one thing that was, that should be brought out is consolidation, the word itself. It doesn't have to mean that departments are going to be consolidated. It could mean that different parts of it could be consolidated. The financial part could be consolidated. So, just a thought, if that was part of the problem, it didn't, and if the word consolidation came up, I think there are different ways to consolidate. It doesn't have to mean a massive takeover of one department or the other.
I think on fire, and I'm glad we had this kind of discussion format so we could air this. It just doesn't lend itself easily to black and white, red and blue solutions. And it's one that we all have to wrestle with. But I really do believe everybody who lives in this place should be part of these emergency services. I just don't understand why we don't. I think I'm going to suggest, in the interest of our time here, that we change what we're doing. And,
Oh, geez.
Are you all ready? Okay.
It's going to be fun now?
Oh,
Oh, it can be
what?
fun now? Okay. I'll tell you what, I'll go to the next question, but I'm not going to ask it. I'm just going to ask it of you. And then I want to leave time for you all each to be able to say a little something at the end, whatever it is you want to say. So
Good
let's.
night. Good
Yeah.
night. Meeting adjourned.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I moved too.
Yeah, you're learning, getting this down. Well, let's go to the question you'd most like me, if I were doing it, which I'm not going to do, but in fact you, ask your opponents in this. You probably thought about it.
If I was up, actually, I had a question that I've decided not to ask you to ask me, so I'd like to pass on this one.
Okay?
The question is, what do I want you to ask me?
Ask your opponents.
Oh, ask my opponents.
Oh, ask your opponents. I thought we skipped that one.
Okay. Well, do whichever one you want. Pick one of the two. We don't have time for both. Pick one of the two. I'll do either one, pretending to be you.
The one question I would ask, well, first, Mr. Marco, why aren't you here, and how are we going to find out actually what you have to say? Through all the literature, I haven't seen anything. I mean, my vote's still out there. If you have something incredible to say, maybe I'd be swayed. They won't vote for myself. Anyway, yeah. The question that I'd ask Barbara is, I seem to have there's mixed messages from the vote you had for not contributing to the kickoff for the public study on the community fields, and yet you were at the fields kickoff meeting, and it seemed like you were supportive of it. So I was wondering, are you against the field study, and your thoughts on recreation as a whole?
I think recreation is a wonderful facility. Amber does a super job. I wasn't against the field study. I didn't know about the field study, and one of my questions I wanted to ask was, how can we communicate better? A lot of the times you're on the board and there's so much happening that one board member doesn't know what the other board member is doing, and it blindsided me. I'm all for putting money, raising money for the fields, but it was the study. And going back to my other things, we have studies for everything, and they cost money. I think we have to really be careful about where we're putting our money. There was another thing I found out that the board was going to do. I read it in the newspaper. I didn't know about it, so it's things like that that bother me a bit. And we also have to take into consideration, recreation is a wonderful entity of our town, but not everyone uses recreation. We have to have a balance. We have to think of, our money is so tight now and our budget is so tight that we have to be careful of everything we put everywhere. Recreation, fields, for our seniors, we have to distribute evenly. Did I get that across all right?
Okay, yeah. Now, then, unless there's anything anybody really wants to say, why don't we, since we don't have that much time left, why don't I let each of you say anything you would like to say for a couple of minutes?
I had a question for my opponents.
Yes, good.
One is, I guess it's maybe for Katie and for Barbara. A lot of their campaign material appears with a photo of a gun rally in front of our town hall on our main street. For Katie, it would be, why so quick to participate in something like a gun rally? That's an important issue to some people in the town, but not give a sentence about the field study or the fire emergency services study. That fire emergency service study, we sought public input for months, and I just, wonder why participate in the big rally? Where were you when I was holding those public meetings regarding the most important critical service in our town? And I guess for Barbara, having been at public meetings where they have gotten contentious, why promote something, that we know, I think in our hearts, guns don't belong at town hall, especially when somebody's First Amendment is being violated because they're too intimidated to speak. It happens at rec meetings, it happens at town board meetings, it happens at planning board meetings. So I can understand advocating for the Second Amendment, but standing out front in front of our town hall and advocating for guns to be in our town hall, to be in our preschool, to be in, our gym, and I don't know why.
I think you're not separating. People that have guns, that have a license for a gun, are responsible gun owners. It's the crazy people that do the other. And you're penalizing the people that go through the process, go through the screening, to get a license, to get a permit. And these aren't people that are going to come on the playground with a gun in their holster. These aren't people that are going to shoot at someone for not getting along with them at a meeting. So two totally different things.
If I could, well, first of all, I don't think that you can actually say that someone, just because they've gone through a class or have gone through, whatever it is that you need to get a gun license, is going to be a responsible person. I think we just don't have to look any farther than automobiles and how many people take tests and get in their cars, and pass tests and, go through 3 or 5 hour courses and then get in their car. They're supposed to be responsible, but how many of those people are responsible? I'm not saying who is or who isn't, but to say that someone, because they have a license, is going to be responsible and isn't going to act irrationally is naive, to say the least.
I'm not saying that wouldn't happen, but you can't penalize those people who go through the process, and that's what you'd be doing. And you can't mess with the Constitution. I mean, this is something that's written, our ancestors. You can't change the law in a town that the federal government has
Well, I believe there are amendments, and I think amendments means they've changed, so I think that's probably not true.
Okay.
I have a question for Dave, if I may.
Sure.
So I know your family, I know your kids, I know they coached my kids wrestling, they've played football. They're all very active, sports-oriented kind of kids. You've been on the school board for a decade?
Yeah.
How did you get involved with the Arts Committee? What inspired you to?
She's softballing me here. I got involved with the Arts Committee. Well, I spearheaded an Arts Committee because there was no booster club, or there was no club in the school for that group of people. I'm involved completely with sports. Been a jock. I watch incredible amounts of sports. I've wasted incredible amounts of my
So
time
boring.
on it.
So boring.
And this portion, the extracurricular, which involves sports, are well funded by booster clubs. They have a lot of backing, and people get the recognition. And then there's another segment of our school that I believe needed some attention and also some recognition. So, I spearheaded it, and luckily there were people that were interested that took off with it. So
Well, thank you for doing that.
thank you for the
Now I do want
For the
to
plug.
move in here before closing and see if there's anything each of you would like to say before we do. Barbara, do you want to start?
Well, the one thing I didn't touch on that I wanted to touch on is tourism. Richard brought it up earlier. The Hudson Valley has a $4.7 billion tourist industry. I think looking around our area, and we have preserved it, and we're surrounded by beauty, I think this is an industry we really should tap on. I just read in the Post that there's a boat that's going to come up from New York City and dock in Cold Spring for 2 hours, and it's going to make stops in Newburgh and other places around. I mean, bring them in, let them eat in our restaurants, let them stay over in our B&Bs, let them shop in our shops. We have history all over. We have the Foundry, we have the library, we have so many things that could draw people into this town and that we could utilize. We can't survive on mortgage tax anymore. We have to find other sources of revenue. And I think tourism, our hiking trails alone, they're phenomenal. Why not capitalize on that?
Well, I agree. That's one reason we, at our little newspaper, put out this map that I think you all have seen, just for that very reason. Nancy?
I just want to end by saying, thank you for letting me represent you, the people, the town of Philipstown, for the past 4 years. I've been involved with everything that makes up a community, from the Depot Theater to the Recreation Commission to the Ambulance Corps. I have my finger on the pulse of the community, whether it was in the back of an ambulance or out in everything I do. And I hope you think of me and vote for me November 8th.
One of the questions that was missed is, what you respect or admire by your opponents. And Barbara coming tonight, I would just like to say I respect that greatly. I think that if you believe in democracy, and if you believe in the Constitution, and if you believe, and shout this out constantly, then you should back it up. You should be here. You should be demonstrating what democracy is all about. And for Barbara to come here without, her peers, I think that's commendable. So thank you, Barbara, for coming. I'd like to also say, I think we skipped over one of why you should be elected. So I'd just like to say that I've grown and learned a lot in the 10 years that I've worked at Haldane. I was not the most admired or loved person when I started out at Haldane, and I didn't believe the direction it was going in was right. And I fought and fought and fought, and I was at the short end many, many of times. So I'm not afraid of losing or speaking my mind, and most people probably know that. What I have learned there is the value of leadership. I believe that people listen, that are leaders, and they listen to where people want to go. Things will get done and can get done. If there are people that just want to shut things down, that's what will happen. I don't like the environment that we're in now. I think it's contentious. I think this isn't about Republicans or Democrats, and you can't shout out different buzzwords that you hear nationally, because that's not it. We're a small community of people, and we might have differences in opinions, but this is not a national level issue. This is not about we're going to take over and we're going to take it back. I don't even know what take it back means, or we're going to open up the doors again. It just doesn't make sense, and it's disturbing, and that's why one of the reasons why I'm running. I think that I have the background for it. I've gone through like 4 contracts with unions. We're involved in those now. We've hired superintendents, principals. I've been on those committees for interviewing, so I know the process on how all this is done. We've passed budgets in very hard times, and we've passed multi-million-dollar referendums for much-needed facilities upgrades and the addition, which is the new high school, which were hard to sell. And I think people trust me now. I believe there's a trust in the board now. We don't have nasty meetings. We don't have many people, calling us on anything. So I think that's a good thing. I hope it is. And I think I could bring that to the board. I think I can bring a trust, and I think people will know that I'll be working hard. I love politics. I love government. I love being involved in this. So hopefully you'll think about me and think about my background and look at the records of everyone. If you want to know what people are about, we have records, and you can look at those records and you can decide if that's what you want or not. If people don't have records, maybe you should consider, not voting for them, because this isn't a joke. It's serious business. Having someone that's your leader, especially a supervisor position, you want to have somebody that knows how to run government, that's been there, and not going to learn on the job. So thank you all for coming, and thank you again, Gordon.
I was the only one that didn't say thank you, so I want to say thank you. And another thing, this is on-the-job training. When Nancy and I got on the board, and we didn't know what we were doing. It takes a while. It's on-the-job training, and that goes for all the offices. And I want to just hit on, what do you respect and admire about your opponents? All of the people that are running, I admire for putting themselves out there, because it isn't easy. And anyone that devotes time to public service, as Gordon said, has my admiration.
If I make one last rebuttal, I don't think a supervisor position is an on-the-job learning experience. I don't think you can jump into that as it's like you can't become the mayor of New York City, or you can't become a governor. It's an important part, and there's a lot that goes to it, and a lot that you have to know before you got there. Richard was learning for years and being mentored by a supervisor before he took the place. So there is a distinction. I definitely do agree with you that a trustee can learn on the job, and it's not going to have a significant impact which way that person goes. But a supervisor is a definite area in which you don't want someone to just come in and learn on the job, because who's he going to learn from, and where's he going to get his information from, and how's he going to run, and how's he going to connect with the other government officials and the other people, the important people that he's going to have to communicate with. So,
but we've seen a fair number of disagreements about different things, but I don't have the feeling that however things work out, that these are people who cannot work with each other. My only recommendation would be expand the town board and have one more seat so all these 3 people can be on it. I feel bad. I learned not to do that a long time ago. Just one word of clarification on our little newspaper called Philipstown.info. We are characterized sometimes as having a partisan view, but I will tell you, I did not start this as a partisan idea. I started because I believe actually that the electronic medium is a very useful way to deal with the demise of community journalism in America. And if anybody feels, I guess I'm the court of last appeal here, that there is ideological or any other kind of bias or prejudice that shows up. We have a full-time managing editor now, Kevin Foley, but if you feel this is the traditional way it's done, that there's something that's not right about how we've covered something, then I am the court of appeal and I will be open to that argument. But to characterize us a priori as something that we are not in the fact, in the text, actually doing, kind of irks me a bit. And so I'm all for looking at what we do and saying this was incorrect or biased. I will be very open to that, but I'm not so open to just being characterized as something and therefore the following things must be true. That is arguing from the theoretical to the empirical. So that's what we're about. We do not take editorial positions. We're not going to. I print, and my own staff doesn't agree with me on a lot of this, I will print anonymous letters because I believe in trying to protect those who may be afraid and intimidated from that intimidation. I also believe that the possibility of that may actually be greater in a small town than in a big community. Over this last issue of participation, I printed letters that attacked me 3 times by anonymous people. And I'm willing to print those letters. I don't like them, but I will print them. And the same goes for announcements of any events, credit, or things sponsored. We will print them, and we will run them as they are. We have a 2.0 version coming out soon that will also offer links to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, LOHUD, and the PCNR. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming, express again my regret that there isn't at least one more seat on the board that there already is, and I think Philipstown is darn lucky and fortunate to have you 3 people willing to try to help us. Thank you again.